Hey, everybody. So glad you're here. Man, I'm excited about today's episode. It's been like 5 years. We're reuniting on the podcast. My friend David Sherry. David, welcome. So glad to have you here.
Dude, so happy to be talking to you today, and can't believe it's been 5 years. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, I've done that when I've done the podcast in 2015, but I always just did like whatever I wanted to talk about. And there was just a little bit of time I did those interviews, and so glad to have you then. Glad to have you back as we do this new format and learning about what it means to lead through our vulnerabilities and what we feel. So David Sherry is a coach to CEOs, founders in the startup space, and especially those in early stage. And I can tell you, of the people that I have known in my life, the people that I can sit down with and jam with on everything, the curiosity to go anywhere and the tenacity to understand it. David, we're glad to have you here today, man. It's going to be fun.
Thanks so much, man. Yeah, we've had many a good long conversation about all different types of topics. So happy to be here with you.
Yeah. You know, I was thinking about this episode and I was like, okay, so I told some fun things in 2017 that were like part of our origin story meeting. And we have like had a lot happen since then too, as we've stayed connected. Some things we can talk about on the podcast, some we can't. So we'll leave the listeners with some mystery there.
Up to imagination.
But as we jump in, yeah, exactly. As we jump in and, man, the world, so much is happening right now. So much change, so much disruption. This is something you and I connect on a lot. But I really want to focus first on you as a person, like how that change and disruption is always really at work in our lives. Where right now do you have a real sense of excitement? You feel like I've got momentum, I'm winning, this feels good, I'm getting those dopamine hits. What comes to mind with that, wherever your mind goes?
Great question. It's always changing. And, I think right now, even though I've always been somebody who's been writing, I've been podcasting for a long time intermittently. I guess I'm very excited right now about shifting from just sort of purely coaching, which is one-on-one conversations. I've been doing those for about the last 3 years with startup founders, to starting to package ideas and publish them, And so my first book is coming out this year. It should be done pretty soon, I think, hopefully within the end of the month. So very excited about that. I'm starting to publish a lot more on YouTube. So learning to be on camera, like this, and publishing frequently there, and really just starting to translate, I guess, a lot of the ideas and conversations that I'm having with startup founders into insights that I can share online. So it's funny because obviously social media and publishing is a huge world that's been around for a long time. I just never really attacked that kind of specific area very intentionally the way that I think I am now. So I see myself writing 10 books. Book one is hopefully going to be out within the month. I see myself making, whatever, hundreds to thousands of videos. And now I'm kind of in that rhythm. So yeah, just very excited about using these amazing mediums that we have. Like again, sounds so simple, but we just forget how powerful putting a video on the internet is to reach new people from around the world. So I'm just very authentically excited about publishing right now.
Dude, I love that. I love the vision of how you've laid that out. It's like the courage to say, hey, it's book one of 10. I remember feeling the same way. It's like, okay, I'm an author. This is just book one. And I would say book 9, 10, and 11 are like at some stage of development right now. And the audiobooks just crossed a certain sales threshold. I'm not huge, that, but it matters. It all starts to add up. I got to tell you this, man, because I'm recording some podcast interviews right now, kind of batch the schedule. So the episode right before this one, they won't come out for a couple months, but here's what he said. And this is a little folklore for people. He goes, I picked up Figure That Shift Out. Somebody said to me about a coaching program I need to take you through. It's called Figure That Shift Out. And he goes, man, it had me at the title. And guys, ladies and gentlemen listening, David Sherry, the man, has titled it because he's got those creative chops. So a little fun folklore there. So the book comes out end of this month. Well, I'll definitely ask at the end, like some stuff, because
Sure.
I love whatever you can share about that.
For sure.
And let people connect around that. What's it like for you to be at the like 90% threshold with that project? Where are you at emotionally with being at that place with it?
Great question. So, I don't know if this will be super interesting to the audience, but I think what was cool for me is it took me a quarter to write. So I basically wrote the book from January to May, which I think is pretty quick. It's not a huge book. And I had a great kind of rhythm for doing that. The writing part, like I said, almost came out pretty quickly. The publishing part, there's so many intricacies to learning Amazon, to learning how to design the layout, to learning how to design, the cover and everything, that it's taken me from basically May to now just to do the publishing piece. So the 90% of writing came out very easily. I was surprised by that. The publishing part is actually taken almost as long as the writing. And I'm hoping that that's going to get faster, next time. So I'd say excited to get it published, and just was very surprised at how much work and effort it took to actually package that book and get it out. But one thing I'm excited about as well is just that, every time you do it, you build systems that you can use next time. You have a better sense about what it's like to actually write. So I'm coming out much stronger, even though there's a big dip after you finish to edit it, to improve it, to package it. So I'm excited to be done with that part of the dip, basically.
Yeah, dude, I'm just glad you put that to words for people, because doing something like that as a creative project, whatever it is, it could even be something small. You're writing a long email where you're trying to win people over to an idea. There's a dip that happens, right? Did it feel like a million decisions you've had to make on the publishing side of things?
Oh yeah. And it's all foreign language, it's Amazon KDP and stuff. It's like, okay, well, I've never heard of that before. And yeah, I think going back to that point about the long game is, it's okay if this book isn't perfect. And I think that's probably where a lot of people get stuck, right? Is that this one book has to be perfect. It has to have all my ideas. And so I think it was easier for me, even though it was still a big dip, just knowing next one's going to be better. There's a bunch of sacrifices you have to make. I like aesthetics. I like design and branding. There's parts of the book where I'm like, if I could do this again and had infinite budget, it'd be better design, be better brand. All those things you have to just kind of slice through and just say, get this one published and then do the next one. And, again, not to go too far in the weeds of publishing, I'm going to republish this book, with an updated version probably in a year or something, right? So there's another mindset shift around, this is an iterative process. It's not the, I'm not writing the Bible. It's one book to be, forever kind of there. It's like, I'll republish that, and I'll update it. And, I guess to go hand in hand with that idea of just publishing right now is just this iteration, kind of just keep iterating, keep publishing, keep republishing. So that's helped me a little bit to mentally get this one out, because it's not the final.
Yeah. Dude, that's awesome, man. I mean, I think everyone can take away such depth from what you're saying, because we get caught up in it. We're like, okay, and a book is easy to do that with, but it could happen with anything, how I performed in the meeting, whatever. But definitely a book, it's like, this book has to contain the multitudes within me. It has to be a full, complete expression of my identity. It can't allow for me to be misunderstood in any kind of way.
Right.
When you start front loading with all that, dude, you're doomed. You're doomed.
Well, you're so right. Because
as we know, people are going to misunderstand us. Yeah.
Yeah, that can show up anywhere for sure.
Can I tell you something?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say real quick, this is hilarious to me. Somebody gave me a nasty Amazon review saying that basically I ripped the book off from somebody else who wasn't even a known name when I wrote the book. Right? So it doesn't matter, like, the way people judge. And anyway, you were going to say it can show up anywhere. Sorry.
Yeah, it can show up anywhere. And I think that the point that I draw from what you're sharing is that when we try to make anything, I almost want to say, when we try to make anything everything to us, right? So if you try to make your relationship everything, if you try to make, the book everything, like, if it has to serve every single need that you have, right? You sort of box it in and you hold really tightly to it. And if you can say, this is for this single sort of specific, simple purpose, right now, this first book is just for me getting good at writing out books. It's not to make money, or this, like you said, this email is just for this one thing, or this partnership is just for this one thing. It's much easier than trying to have it fulfill all of your needs.
I love that phrase, when you make anything everything. It's so good. Where right now do you feel like, if we go to the opposite, where do you feel right now that you're trying to figure something out? You feel kind of stuck with it. You want to see it turn around or improve. And this could be personal, professional, wherever your mind goes.
Yeah, I think probably a few things come to mind. Always improving. I think, one thing that's been interesting for me is, so I was a founder for 7 years. And there's a lot of, I guess, activities that come with being a founder. Some of which are sort of creative in how you put together a brand and bring on partners. And I think as a coach, I sort of shifted gears to be someone who's sort of sat, behind the founder essentially. So as counsel, to these startup founders. And I think I'm feeling a little bit of that itch to be a little bit at the forefront again. And I don't want to do it necessarily the exact same way that I did it before. I think there's a really common kind of trap here where you try to picture, how do I go back to that thing that I did previously, right? Like, can I try to pattern match and, start a company that looks like the one that I started before or something like that. And so I'm in this wrestle moment of, I know I don't want to do the same thing that I did previously or try to find an opportunity that looks the exact same, because I have changed and I have moved into more of this personal counsel type role. And I'm feeling a little bit of a pull to produce sort of products and brands that have some scalability, have more maybe cultural impact in the conversation, which is something you don't really get directly in a one-on-one coaching capacity. So I think for me, it's just, I'm in that wrestle mode of trying to integrate who I am now, which is not the person I was running that company, with some of the desires maybe that are coming up around building a brand, probably is a concise way of putting that. And so I think I'm just wrestling with those two concepts, and I'm trying to avoid pattern matching. I should just, be like I was, I don't think I want to do that.
Yeah, it's such great awareness. I mean, that's the trap people fall into, right? And you've articulated it so well. And I think it adds such strength to your coaching, because this is what I tell people all the time. Like, I'm not coaching you from an ivory tower of what I've done. I'm also seeking to actively build an organization. And so I'm living in the pressures of my own world of leading an organization, delivering services, getting involved in sales, delegating sales, getting involved in product development, it's all of that. And it adds such a reality, I think, a freshness to the impact we have. So that's super cool. Okay, so you've been on this journey of awareness. As long as I've known you, you're like, I'm going to grow. I want to learn more. I want to get better. Not that there is one. I'm just curious if there's like an origin story where for you a light bulb went off and you said, man, I can really make some changes. I can grow myself. I can develop myself. What is that origin story? Or when did you feel like you really started to get some momentum along those lines?
It's a great question. You're involved in the origin story, or in part of the origin story. I do have an early memory that I think back to that I think encapsulates some of the work that I do when I was a kid. And I was sort of the oldest. I was the youngest in my family, but the oldest kind of guy in the neighborhood. And I sort of remember like basically having other kids in the neighborhood who were younger than me, and teaching them basketball or soccer, or basically being the coach. Like, I'd be on the sideline, they'd be on the basketball court, and I'd be having them do drills, and I kind of remember this moment as well of, some little fight happening or something, and me, kind of making both parties feel better, basically in that kind of coach type role. So that's an early memory of mine that's kind of funny. That's like, I wanted to support their growth. I was practicing a lot myself, but I was also arranging, for some drills in the neighborhood. So that's the early origin story that made me feel so incredible. Good, at the time, that I really, that was like, this is a really good feeling, right? It was like that positive reinforcement. I think the second thing is some people feel this way, so I want to share it, is, my wiring, as you would say, is I have some internal drive that's just on, that I feel like I was born with, right? Where it's just like, I just have something in me that's always striving for, the next edge. And it feels like it's just always been there. That can be confusing or difficult for many reasons when you're growing up, because it's harder to turn off, right? It's harder to be present. But I think accepting that that's just something that there's some driver in there, right? That's always seeking kind of growth. And feels like I was born with that. So I think that's the second thing I'd say. But the third thing, which involves you, is I did coaching through SightShift. I want to say it was maybe 2016, something like that, 2015, 2016. And what I'd say SightShift did for me is it opened the door. Maybe the door was cracked, but I think SightShift kind of opened the door further to my growth. It kind of revealed a bigger, more intentional possibility for my own growth and development. At the time, I was a CEO. And so the framing, I think, was very much around business, but there's a lot of personal stuff in there as well, as many SightShift people know. And so what I'd say is that the initial SightShift program, the 12-week program, it really if there was a little bit of a crack of, I know I like personal development, I know I want to grow, I know I have this driver. It was like SightShift sort of opened that door wider. More light came in, to this journey that I wanted to be on, that I felt was so fulfilling. And so I think that actually really accelerated my almost fulfillment of the desire to grow. It showed me I could make this part of my growth intentional. It didn't have to be happenstance. So I appreciate that. And I thank you for that. And so I'd say that was a big accelerator and catalyst.
Dude, wow. So meaningful to hear. Thank you. I could see you playing, and directing and coaching as the kid. That was awesome. I love that you have that memory and you can access that. That's beautiful. And now I'll also never listen to Lady Gaga's Born This Way the same. I'm going to listen to it and think about us.
I have to listen to this later today.
We've been born this way.
I think people have that feeling. Wiring. So I wanted to share that because I think some people, that's how it feels to me. So, that's all I can say.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what's funny? I actually just got a text from a high school buddy earlier today. So, this would have been back in 95 when I graduated high school, right? And 7 years ago. And when I was in college, I was like really starting to learn myself. And I was ambitious, right? And I thought, have I always been this way? Because I don't remember being this way. So I actually reached out to this high school buddy back then, when I was like 20, and said, dude, in my mind, all I cared about was like hanging out in high school. Was I ambitious? And he's like, are you kidding? And he's enlightening me to how I had missed this essential element to who I am. This makes me think about like really what it means to come to terms and peace with the fullness of who you are, the strengths of who you are. And this is just a question I love asking right now, or maybe longer term, wherever your mind goes with it. What does David Sherry like about being himself the most?
Nice. That's an awesome question. And just to touch on what you were just mentioning, I think everybody should go through the exercise of reaching out to people from high school and just asking, what was I like? I think that'd be pretty revealing. Or what memories do they have, right? I think that would be a fun exercise for anybody. Would you mind repeating the question? I want to answer it specifically. So yeah.
That's good. I love that you draw out that protocol, because that people could totally go do that. So yeah, right now for yourself, and your mind might go back to something in the past. That's fine. But as you just are relaxed with who you are, enjoy being who you are, what's something you like about being yourself the most?
Great question. Where my mind goes is, I feel really grateful about being me. I think I know this is a Naval Ravikant quote, but it's like, if you ever feel jealous of somebody else, ask yourself if you would wholesale change everything about your life to be them. So if you're feeling jealous, you sort of think like, oh, I want what they have. It's like, yeah, but do I want all of their life? Do I want to trade everything they've had to do to be there? All the things that they have on their plate right now. And anytime I run that little simulation, it's always just like, I would never trade, everything I have for everything that other person has. And a big part of that for me right now is, and I'm in a stage of life where I think this is a little bit easier. I don't have kids. I live in Santa Monica, which is beautiful. It's very walkable. But I've been spending a lot of intention around my calendar. And I would say my calendar, I feel like this would come off like it's bragging or something, but my calendar is just so amazing. Like, how I spend my time during the week is 80 to 95% of how I would like to spend my time. And I think that is in part maybe rare or lucky, in part a lot of, intention. And so, yeah, I love the dynamic of my week. It's split into, right now, more specifically, 2 days, no meetings. So Monday and Tuesday, I don't have any meetings with anybody. The full, day is I can work on deep work projects as much as I want. Then the next 2 days are full of coaching. So I'm on with clients. And I love that. And then Friday's a little bit more personal time. I catch up with friends. I do some other type of work that I want. I'm also working, half of Saturdays, but that schedule is just so dynamic, to have the deep work time to go be creative, to have the extroverted time to be with clients, right? To have some personal time baked in. I just really am happy with my schedule and happy that I feel in a space where I can design it differently if it's not serving me anymore. That's super fun. And again, I don't want this to sound like whatever, but I did catch up with a friend he's part of a very successful company that's growing really quick right now. And we got coffee on Friday or something. And I was just sitting outside, I had is whatever, 11 a.m. I had my coffee, sitting in the sun. Yeah. He's like, man, is this what you do? like frequently? And it's like, well, not every day, but usually my Fridays are pretty relaxed like this. He's been in, back-to-back meetings every day, all day, which is very common for people. So, I'm thrilled about my schedule.
Right on. I would, the jokes I make with people around this is like, yeah, you're ruined, man. Once you are on your own, and then once you cross that threshold of understanding, I can tell people when I'm available. I can direct my calendar. It's not anybody else's, it's mine. It's just another level of like, this is for me what wealth feels like. That today I went and ran in the heat because I wanted to, and then took a walk in between meetings, and I'm doing the meetings I want to do. And dude, what did this make me think of? Something I used to teach. Go ahead.
Oh yeah. You just bring up a great point though, which is, I think everyone could consider, the difference between what wealth means to them and what wealth means societally. And I would totally agree that I just very much value having control of my schedule. And there is a trade-off with money. I think I could be making more money, but my schedule would be way worse. And it's also not to say that I'm not working. I think I'm working more than I was even when I had my startup. It just feels different because, to have 4.5 hours of deep work on a Monday, I think that's probably more productive in some ways than when I was, kind of frantic with the company. So you can still work super hard. But yeah, I would think about the trade-off between, I can make more money, but what does that do for my sanity or my stress or my, ability to have more control of my schedule. Time. Dude, last thing, right time is not, time is the least scarce thing. Money's not scarce, right? Time is the only thing that's actually scarce.
Yeah. I love that. and so I think you may say time is the most scarce thing. And that is like, that's everything, you know? And I love what you're saying about like, my days are actually more intense this year than they were last year. And that they were more intense, you know, because the clarity increases the effectiveness, and I put more intensity behind that. But I shift, like Josh Waitzkin talks about. I don't simmer at the 6. I live in fully on and 10, or relax, setting it all down in the 1 and the 2. And when I'm simmering at the 6, I can feel it. I start to get frustrated, and it's a you know, signal to me. So, dude, you're throwing out some vision for people. That is something that I hope and I believe is enticing them. What would you say is a skill that you've developed as a leader that you think is really important to live this kind of life that you're describing?
Yeah, the first thing that comes to mind is I think about sort of pulling the future forward faster. So when I think about the clients that I'm working with, they have some vision, they have vision or decision, right? So vision is sort of what they're picturing or imagining for themselves from like a goal standpoint. Decisions are, you could kind of picture them as like a fork in the road. They're trying to figure out which direction to go. And I think one thing I do from a leadership perspective when I lead clients is I take what they see as a vision or what they see as a potential decision, which feels like it's far off in the future, and I bring it into the present. And in a way, it's almost like if you picture this sort of distant mountain that's the vision, or this distant fork in the road, you know, it's like, how do I pull that to today and say, okay, so what's the decision? You know, which way are you going to go? That thing you've been waffling on or thinking about or, you know, pushing off, you know, or for the vision, oh, cool. You know, why don't you send that company an email saying that you're putting together that program, see if they want to buy, you know? So I think the leadership principle is really time. You know, it's sort of like time is this weird thing that can expand if you let it, or contract if you sort of choose to. And so I think to lead others is to help them bring that future forward faster, which has a massive compounding effect, right? So if I don't make this decision for 6 months, then the next decision tree that comes up might be further out, right? Whereas if I bring it to today, now I'm facing new things, right? So there's a compounding effect to how we use our time as well. And I think you can do that in a non kind of hype way. But yeah, helping people just take that next step bringing them back to the present, I suppose. So rather than pushing off the future and seeing how they can make some progress immediately.
Man, that's so inspiring. It took me back actually to a conversation in 2017 I had with a coach receiving coaching, and she was having the conversation with me around economics. That wasn't the most motivating thing, but it was the most concrete way we could have the conversation. And so she was like, so how would you get to $250,000? I was like, this. She's like, well, how would you get to $1 million? I was like, well, I'd do this. She's like, well, just do that now. And it was freaking like so on point. And so much of the good stuff now is because of bringing that, like you're saying, that future into this present moment much quicker than waiting.
Yeah. And the waiting thing is tough because it, like I said, it sort of can delay then other things, right? There's almost like a, you know, now you're delaying the next vision that you'd see, you know, and people shouldn't stress about that. But yeah, how can I be that person now? Or how can I have that thing now? And I think people have a story about how it has to be sometime in the future, but usually there's some way to have a piece of that now. And so if we go back to this calendar idea, you know, maybe you're listening to this and you're like, oh man, I wish I had more time to catch up with friends. Or maybe you're saying, I wish I had that calendar. Not saying you are, but you know, something like that. My question would be, do you have 30 minutes this week for that type of thing? You know, now you have a piece of that today, or a piece of that now. So, figure out what those sort of distant dreams or needs are, and how can I experience that in the next 5 minutes? You know, we might catch up after this podcast, and that's a version of me having some of that experience right away.
Right on. It's not all or nothing. And I love how you're sensitive to people listening to this, that it's not all or nothing, that this isn't about hype. It's not about them feeling bad. It's about really trying to be in an honest place with yourself and say, what does it look like? Yeah, to be that now. Okay, so we know there's just a lot of disruption, a lot of chaos, even pain in the world right now. If you were to broadcast out a message to leaders or people in general or both that you think would be something that would be of a high value of encouragement, what would that message be?
So I have one that's super top of mind for me. So I'm laughing because it's such a funny thing, very simple. My message is Google it. Because I just made this change in the last like 2 weeks. It's really interesting how we read things in the paper, online. We see people talking about something on a Twitter thread. We get an email and we read all these concepts, right? Like for me, I like finance. So I'm reading the term Roth IRA. I'm reading the term 529 account, right? And I just typically would just go past all these things that I didn't actually know. So there's all these things that I sort of think that maybe I know, or that, or terms I've just never heard of. And I have this new rule for myself, which is I Google to understand what something is or why it's like that. So you hear about some new, you hear about some building in a city you're going to travel to. Who made it? Why'd they make it? What year was it made? There's just so much information available to us through Google or through YouTube, searching YouTube for how does this work, that I am constantly searching things that I don't know. And that's very different than being on social media and only paying attention to the things that you already know and are reinforcing your worldview. So I think the first thing is just, it again sounds so simple, but I am trying to make this effort for myself to just constantly Google, what is a Roth IRA? Why is it different than a traditional IRA? What's a 529 account? What's the origin of this? Why was it made? And then challenge every basic assumption. Is real estate a smart investment? Google right after that, is real estate a stupid investment? Google right after that, how many people lose money on real estate per year, right? Like just ask these questions to Google, to YouTube, of things you don't know. Focus on all the things you don't know. Challenge all the basic assumptions that you've made. And I just feel like my learning is progressing very quickly just in the last 2 weeks from doing that. So I would say Google everything and challenge, all the baseline assumptions that you hear. So any just trite saying, figure out who benefits from that. Why are they saying it? What the origin story is. Because we have this amazing tool, like Google and YouTube are just incredible, and use those to learn what you don't already know.
It's awesome, because so much of what causes the stress is because of the polarity and us against them. What keeps us misinformed is this binary thinking, and then to search the opposite side of it. What a beautiful way to start expanding your brain, your mind, rewiring your mind, expanding your consciousness. I love that. I have to say, David, and not that I expect any different, but like, what a unique time we've had today. Like, only you, these answers, and so helpful for people. What would be a place you would point people to go to if they wanted to connect with you more? Anything you would want to share with people that are listening that you'd like for them to get excited about with you, either of those or both?
Yeah, if you are like an early stage business owner, founder, someone who's found success but needs to scale to the next level, you feel like you're at this sort of defining moment. Maybe you're growing your team for the first time. You can reach out for coaching, and that's at davidsherry.me. That's just my personal website. I also have a Substack called, it's davidsherry.substack.com. And I'm sharing more there, some writing and some recommendations for people and products that might serve them. So I think those are the two best places. I'm on Twitter frequently as well. And yeah, if you're on those channels, you also hear about the book. And just a quick note on the book. The book is for first-time founders hiring their first team. So if that sounds like you, or you could be a business owner, you're making your first hire, you need to scale, you need to delegate, you haven't been able to pull the trigger. This is kind of like the E-Myth, but very practical for that demographic.
Love the focus of that. Love the focus of that. And for those listening, it's David, like you'd expect, Sherry, SHERYY, because he gave you the URLs and some of the Twitter handle. Yeah, SHERRY. Did I add a letter? I know it off the top of my head.
2 Y's, but
yeah,
I could try that.
That's hilarious. I just did that without even trying. No. But I want people to be able to find you. So yeah, don't miss out the detail on that. Thank you for being here. And, dude, this has been so much fun. Can't wait for people to listen to it and share it, and be served by it. Thanks for being here, buddy.
Thank you. Yeah, I appreciate it.